Welcome back to Scale Success Reptile Podcast. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. And tonight we have another longtime hognose breeder coming on to talk about hognose and their experience in the reptile world. So before we get to that, I want to give you guys a quick update on what's going on here in our world. So from the last podcast, what we had I went out to Houston, Texas. Big shout out to Houston, Texas, Reptilian Nation, and everybody that came out. The reptile community out there was very welcoming. Great show, great attendance, and a lot of people that were there. Just it was like a thing to do that weekend as well. And we had a lot of people just that didn't own reptiles, but maybe were interested in them. That were open to education stuff. So that's really cool. And like I always say, it's really cool to sell sometimes people's their first hog nose. So I had, I think, one or two people buy their first hog nose that weekend as well. I went out there with as an exotic fire hogs. We set up together. So big shout out to him. It's been a really great experience traveling out to Texas to do shows. And this year we're thinking about adding a couple of one or two other states within the shows. So check out, stay tuned to what shows we're going to do. Maybe the Carolinas or maybe California. We'll see how that goes, but we'll keep you guys updated. So we did that. Like I said, big shout out to everybody out in Houston. What else? Breeding season is here. Well, it's in full effect again. We've had babies pipping right now. We just put away our first set of babies yesterday, I believe. Yeah, yesterday. And if you guys follow the YouTube channel with the vlogs and the updates and stuff like that, I've been a little behind on uploading stuff because of the shows, the babies, and making sure the females, and the males are paired up and all that stuff. But I'm gonna keep uploading videos that I have already pre-recorded for you guys to see our journey. And like I always say, the pre-recorded videos that we put out is just basically our experience and our journey within the reptile world and breeding Western hognose and keeping them. So we got going on. Another big announcement is we're very close to hitting that 1,000 subscriber mark. So we dropped a video on Sunday. We're going to do a giveaway event. We're going to give away a double het Mai Tai male, 2023 male. So double het Mai Tai is sable and toffee belly. So if you guys want to enter to win him and a couple other prizes from Shipyard Reptiles, Husbandry Pro, and some swag from Blue Tongue Republic. Larry put some. We did a Cobra ending design and some of his original stuff that we're giving out. If you guys are interested in winning any of those prizes, make sure you go check the video out to see how to enter and win that. Participate in the giveaway. And what else we got going on? Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. We did hatch one of the clutches that was, really anticipating was my RB toxic male to my sable female. So we have triple het sable Azantic toffee bellies. So, they're all normals. Some are RBE. So some are looking very unique. We're going to see how they develop, and then we'll probably release a handful of stuff from there. So it's really cool to see that. And before we start the show and give a shout out to our sponsors, let's give a quick shout out to everyone that's here real quick. Jane S. Exotics, Jane Perry, thanks for joining. Thanks for joining us here tonight. Bosa Reptiles, what's going on, Geeky? Thanks for joining it. TNA Snakes, Anthony, what's going on? Thanks for always supporting us here. Meteoric Serpents, Joey. So Meteoric Serpents, Joe. This Friday we have another episode of Thank God It's Colubrids on the Trap Talk channel, Trap Talk Network. So make sure you guys go over there on Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we're gonna talk a little bit about setting up, hatchlings, colubrid hatchlings. He keeps rat snakes. He's got some bamboo snakes too. And we're going to talk a little bit of what his process of setting them up, and then how I set up my hog nose here. So go check it out. And he also has his own podcast, Colubrid Corruption. He brings on a handful of people that have colubrids within their collections. Welcome, Hogging Out. What's going on? TNA Snakes, Ozark, Justin. What's going on, man? Um, vended with him in Dallas. Really cool person, and he's just dipping his toe. Actually, he's taking a deep plunge into the hognose world. So cool to see him here. All right, guys. Thank you again for joining us tonight. And before we bring on the guest, we're going to do a quick shout out to our sponsorships and partners. Sea Serpent Rack and Incubators is the official sponsorship of Clover's Reptile and Scale Success Reptile Podcast. If you're looking for a PVC rack or incubator, make sure to check them out. We've been using their racks for the past 2 years, and it's a great product, and they have great customer service. Now let's mention our partnerships. Reptilinks has partnered up with Clover's Reptiles and Scale Success Reptile Podcast. If you want to feed a diverse diet to your reptiles, make sure to check them out and use Clover to get $5 off your next order. If you want to take your husbandry and record keeping to the next level, make sure to take advantage of the free 30-day trial with our link in the description below, or scan the QR code on your screen. Husbandry Pro has helped us keeping track of our breeding plans, our hatchlings, and overall just keeping us organized with all of our reptiles. Make sure to use shipyourreptiles.com to receive or ship your reptiles, and use Clover's 15 to save $15 off any one shipment. All right, guys, a big thank you to the sponsors and partners. Any of these companies that we support, we use on a daily basis. We have Sea Serpent racks in our back, so big thank you to Chris. He's a staple in the reptile community, big supporter of USARK. So that's another big thing. Make sure you guys support USARK National and USARK Florida, because they fight for our privilege of keeping our reptiles, and fight against any laws that can limit on what type of reptiles and how many we can keep. So if you guys don't have a membership, go in the description below. There's a link, and go get a membership to both. Even if you don't live in Florida, you can be a USARK Florida member. It's very inexpensive, and there's even a free membership that helps. A lot of the stuff that begins in Florida, other neighboring states start adopting. So if we can have the fight early here in Florida and have the resources, monetary wise and numbers and support, it's a very big important step in keeping animals. And we had somebody that just jumped in a little bit after minutes. Bohemian Exotics, Carissa, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for joining us. And while we before we bring on the guest, make sure you guys to subscribe, like, and then hit the comments out late after the show. Rewatch the episode, and if you guys are interested in a specific question or topic, or you just want to show support, make sure to drop a super chat here. And without further ado, let's bring on your guest. Welcome, Erin and Andrew. How's it going?
Doing all right.
Yeah.
Doing good. Yeah. Not good, mid week night and stuff like that. And to let the guests know, we've been scheduling this for the last month and a half, 2 months maybe. I had the Houston show coming back, and then I had another event we were supposed to do last night. I had an last minute event at my daughter's school. So we're here tonight, and we're gonna have some good conversations, some hognose, reptiles, and stuff like that. Anything that's going on in your guys' world that you wanna, that's fresh on your mind that you want to bring to the audience?
The only thing I wanted to mention is that, I saw you had Sea Serpents as a sponsor. I can 100% say Chris has been amazing to us since we first started. Everything we have is pretty much in Sea Serpent racks, except for we bought some other racks in 2020 when you couldn't get anything else.
Yeah.
But other than that, everything's in.
They don't compare.
They don't compare. We've been our incubators are from Chris. Everything's been from Sea Serpents.
That's right. Yeah.
Very good to us.
Yeah. And I forget, where are you guys located?
We're about an hour north of Tampa. 2
Out of
hours
Tampa, yeah.
west of Orlando. So
Gotcha. Okay.
Right on the Gulf Coast.
yeah, around the Gulf Coast. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, Chris is about like a 40-minute drive for me. So it's, such a privilege, such a,
Sounds nice.
benefit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we
But
did
they're-
5 hours one day to go pick up an incubator. So, it's
it's worth the
each way,
5 hours.
so 10 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's cool. Yeah, man, super great customer service, really good guy. Easy to communicate and ask questions about the racks or tubs, any of that stuff.
Yeah, and
So, yeah.
longevity wise too, they've been good. I mean, the first ones we bought, we still use. So we're talking 6-7 years now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
something like that. I don't know. It all blends, together.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, kind of like you said, it's midweek, but for me, it's just another day.
Yeah.
'Cause when you have all these animals, you don't really get a day off.
It just rolls through. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all written on a calendar, and you just do whatever it says to do that day. So yeah.
I hear that. Yeah. And before I forget too, guys, for Husbandry Pro, right now we're doing a 6-day free trial with code Clover 60. So if you guys want to try that out, when you sign up, type in Clover 60 in the code, and you can get an extra 30 days off with a free trial. So let's get into this. Quick background of you guys on how long you guys been into the reptile world and breeding hognose.
We definitely have different stories there. So I'll start with mine. I started keeping reptiles when I believe I was like 15 or 16. And I bred, my first reptile was a Colombian red tail. And the first thing I bred was Colombian red tails. I got way into it, had a whole bunch of them, and it was a project to say the least. But it was enjoyable, and I learned a lot with them. Then I did the normal stuff, bearded dragons, leopard geckos. Dart frogs was many years. I got completely out of all those other things, and I did some Ufega, and I bred a lot of Camellia and things like that. The Rantomea. And then I completely got out of animals. I decided I was going to have a normal life, and I didn't have a single animal when I met her. And yeah. And then how she got into reptiles was meeting me.
Pretty much.
Okay.
I wasn't allowed to have snakes when I was younger because my dad was afraid of them. And I was told I could have a lizard, but that never came to completion, which is good because my mother had this false notion that black and white tegus were small and docile. So yeah, that would have gone poorly. And I would have had to rehome it anyways when I went to college and everything. So, it worked out. But my experience is mostly just in biology and wildlife. Like I've always had a passion for wildlife and reproductive behaviors and whatnot. So having my own zoo essentially where I can watch animal behaviors constantly is pretty amazing.
Yeah. So when did you introduce Andrew? When did you introduce the reptiles?
When we first started dating, she started with fish. She got a fish tank, and then she talked about wanting a reptile, and I was like, I just want to warn you, there's no such thing as one. This is a slippery slope. And we went to, I believe, a Tampa Repticon. I think so. And she was all excited, never seen anything like it. I was like, this place is, I don't want to say, like we do Tampa Repticon stuff too, but there's no comparison to Daytona. And I hadn't been to a Daytona in years, and we went to Daytona and we saw the banner for the Xanthic Superconda. I can't think of his name.
Brent
Gardner had his table set up, but he wasn't there. He sold out on Friday before the show started. So he had his table, he left his banners up, but he wasn't there, so we never spoke with him or anything. But we were like, that's it. That snake on that banner, we want that. We left Daytona with an albino conda and an Xanthic het snow. Het albino. Those were our first two. And figured, in a few years we'll work our way to that Xanthic super conda. Mm-hmm. And within a month we had 10.
He wanted 10
as total.
Females total.
That was my goal, 10 total.
Like that was it. He only wanted 10 females.
Yeah.
We hit, I think, 8 within 2 months, and then it was 23 within the first 5. And then
I warned her.
Honestly, I think my total was just around 100 holdbacks for under the FWC permit,
Okay.
including the babies or anything like that. That's all the adults and all the holdbacks from last year.
Once you start getting one morph, and you're like, but I need this morph, and I need
Yeah.
and I need this combo of those morphs. And before you know it, you're sitting there going, I have no reason to keep this, but I also don't want anyone else to have it. So this one's mine. So yeah, it snowballed, and it's been good though. It's been exciting, and this is the best time of year. We had our first babies hatch as well. We put them in our rack yesterday, our first ones, and we have more that should start hatching on Friday, and then pretty much from there it's just nonstop.
Yeah. So quick backtrack to Daytona. Around what year was that? Do you guys remember?
That was 2016.
Okay.
So it really wasn't all that long ago.
Yeah.
Thankfully, he has more experience in keeping and whatnot.
Yeah. It was fun going to Daytona because I know a lot of people, and there are people that, when you're in the hobby, you see them, you talk to them. But when you're out of the hobby, you don't. So like we saw a bunch of, reptile friends that I hadn't seen in at least 5, maybe 6 years. So it's kind of just going around saying hi to everybody at the same time, kind of fall back into that community. And, once we got animals, then we just see them all the time now.
Yeah.
So,
I know when we started, there weren't any other hognose at Tampa or Orlando Repticons.
Yeah.
I mean, even to this day, I've done a couple of the Repticons,
we saw you at Orlando. Yeah.
I did, what is it? Fort Walton like last month, and it's still not as common to see, specific hognose breeders at these shows and stuff like that. Yeah. I get when I do these shows, I get a lot of like, oh wow, you have the most hognose we've ever seen, when we come to this stuff.
Yes.
But it's gonna change. I think within the next, 2-3 years, we're gonna see a lot more hognose.
I think so.
I do think the difficulty with breeding them does
wear on people.
Hinder that a little bit. It slows it down. Like everyone has that excitement in that first, and they want to collect them all and breed them. And
a couple infertile clutches, they get a little discouraged.
Yeah.
It's like we have king snakes and milk snakes too, and a couple other animals, crested geckos, and the idea of you put animals together, you get fertile eggs, or with hognose, you put a bunch together and you get a lot of duds. Yeah. And it's,
you get babies that don't want to eat.
Or you get babies that don't want to eat.
I think that's one of the biggest, I say, challenges and things that would test your patience. And, if you really want to do this, feeding, 100 or plus, and I'm saying for myself, because that's what I had last year. It is a daunting task. I could just imagine 400-500,
we had a 300 plus year 2 years ago, I think it was, and we have to split up our feeding days for our hatchlings into like 2 or 3 separate days during the week because having full-time jobs and then having the snakes to feed, like it was just getting to be too much. Like had to be split up.
And then you still have the adults and the babies and the other animals and other responsibilities, and it kind of gets like it can wear on you. And I do feel like that's one of the, all snakes have their own difficulties. I don't want to say hognose are any more specifically difficult than any other snakes, because even, we have some milk snakes right now that'll only eat live. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we don't have a good live supply of rodents near us. And so, that's its own challenge to get over. So I won't say hognose are specifically harder, but they definitely, it seems like there've been a lot of people that were all gung-ho, even in the amount of time that we've been doing it, and then have since faded away or switched to something else, or kind of backed off the amount of
with you guys getting hognose, was that a species you had already looked into, or was it that Super Conda Xanthic that drew you to that species?
I had wanted hognose when I was a teenager. When I was breeding boas and stuff. They were never available. It wasn't something you could just go get. The decision to purchase it, when we did purchase it, I was torn between doing hognose or viper boas, and those were like 2 of my like dream animals when I was a kid. And I was like, if we're going to do something, these are 2 things I specifically want. Yeah. And I'm glad we went with hognose.
Yeah, you guys did a good choice, especially even 8 years ago. It was still brand new. You saying you got albino, had Xanthic stuff. I could just imagine what you guys paid for at that time for those things. You
It
know,
wasn't that bad.
It
Yeah.
wasn't
Really?
too bad. I mean, we
Yeah.
got them from Travis Whistler, so
Okay. Yeah.
you know, he's a wholesale breeder essentially.
Breeds a lot
To
of
some
stuff.
extent, he sells them usually before they're feeding, which
Mhm.
you know is their decision.
Yeah.
But it wasn't too bad.
No, they both did really well.
Yeah.
They both produced for us. So yeah, they're good animals.
I will say that spontaneously buying them isn't exactly the best option, especially when you don't know too much about them and you look
Yes.
up a care guide and it happens to be the Reptile magazine care guide that's like the copy and paste version of a corn snake just with the name changed or something like that. Like
yeah, I'll say we started with our first babies in 10 gallons, and like most of the people we sell snakes to, they didn't want to eat.
Yeah.
It took us a little bit of time to learn that downsizing was kind of the way to get them going. I mean, we went through the same trials that everyone else goes through, and when we talk with our customers and stuff that are having issues, we try to be like, we've been here. We know what it's.
Speaking from experience, yeah.
Which is why, you know, I wrote a care guide that's a little bit too wordy for the most part, but you know, it's extensive and specific for a reason, because I, as a biologist, I firmly believe that if people understand the reasoning behind something, they're more likely to listen and take at least my advice more seriously.
Yeah, we get people that buy babies and they're like, will they be okay in a 40 gallon? And it's like, no, like do not do that.
At least not right away.
Yeah,
just
like
not right away.
Yeah, you can work towards that, but let's not put the 10-gram baby that's still eating pinkies.
Yeah. And that's another thing, like how small these hognose out when they're, I mean, the first 3-4 months of their life, they're so small.
Oh yeah.
You know?
So, until they get to fuzzies, they really just don't grow with any gusto. You know, they're putting on weight, but it's a small meal, and it takes them time to really start packing on any kind of size.
So after getting those first hognose at Daytona, when did you guys decide we're gonna breed?
I think we got
right away. The bug bit you guys hard.
Well, I mean, our first ones were, we bought an albino condom male and exanthic het albino female, because I've always been a firm believer that like if I'm going to keep it, I want to breed it. That's a big part of the fun.
And I'm not going to disagree with that idea, considering I have a fondness for, studying animal reproductive behavior. I'm not going to say, no, let's not breed them.
I'd bred enough other animals before that I knew that, like, going in, that was part of the plan. I didn't necessarily plan on growing as big as we did, as quick as we did, but I definitely planned on the initial purchase was with the intent to breed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we had the
so what would say around like 2018 was your first, 2018, 2019, your first breeding season?
I think so. I think it was 2018.
I don't remember when that hurricane was, because they hatched during that hurricane.
It was during Hurricane Irma.
Yeah. So whenever Hurricane Irma was, that was our first babies.
Yeah. Okay. We'll definitely have to touch on that subject.
We were evacuating.
Yeah, because we live near the coast, so we live on a mandatory evacuation side, and the police are knocking on our door, and we're trying to load up the snake eggs.
Actually,
we definitely got to touch on
the
that.
Snake eggs.
That's good. That's a good story there.
Yeah, we had to feed with the police to let us back in, essentially.
So another question I had with you guys, because your logo and your name is very unique. How did you guys come up with those?
The name was a lot of time and thought. We went in with the intent that I wanted to not be species specific, because I have done enough animals to know that you cycle through things. I said I used to do just frogs. We unfortunately don't have a single frog right now. I love frogs. So like I understand that just because you're working on something now does not mean you'll be working with it in 2, 5, 10 years. You might work with a different. So I wanted to go with something that kind of grouped everything. And again, she's a biologist, so ectotherm kind of covered that whole gambit, and not to I wanted to sound a little bit bigger than we were. Branding is
it's a big part.
Classier. Like care about the health and quality of the animals, because we do.
We do.
We didn't want it to be looking like some backyard like breeder. No offense to the backyard breeders, but we want it to come off a little bit more sophisticated.
Yeah. What's that saying? Within the workforce, is like dress for the job you want, right?
Correct.
And stuff like that. So same concept. Portray yourself with being professional.
Yeah.
Good name, good logo. Makes a big difference.
Yeah, we didn't want to do a show. It actually took her a long time to convince me to do a show, because I didn't want to show up with some animals on a table. And I mean, those people, there's plenty of great breeders that do that. No lights, no display. That's fine. But I wanted to kind of be a presence. A large banner with our logo, and everything's lit. With LEDs, and as much as we can to try to show off the animals, showcase the animals as best as we can, and also, show the cleanliness that we try to keep with our stuff, not just like, hey, here's an animal,
Yeah.
So if you don't put money and effort into presenting yourself, can you really? Yeah. It puts into doubt how much effort you put into the animals.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And every little, detail you put into a show, your animals, posting your animals on Morph Market, your website, because I'm definitely gonna bring you guys' website up. When I first got into Hognose, I was on your guys' website a lot, just going through like the morphs and stuff like that. So we're definitely gonna bring that up. I think it was helpful for myself, and it can still be helpful for many people. And same thing for us. It's one of the biggest challenges of doing shows further away is, do you want to just show up with a tablecloth and just deli cups?
Correct.
And for us is a no. And that's one thing where like maybe Texas might be the furthest show we do, because we can drive that and still bring all our stuff, because I've tried both. I did the NARBC, and we flew and shipped animals and displays, and that
sounds rough.
Animals were fine.
Yeah.
It was the displays that were a mission. Stuff got cracked. Yeah. Driving was a couple more days, but everything got there perfectly fine. We got there on time.
It's a lot of equipment.
It is. Me and husband did the show together, so we split the drives, back and forth and stuff like that. So it wasn't, I think we did a trailer too. So I think we did about like on average 19 hours each way.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like 19 hours with two people driving, and we stopped in Pensacola on the way out of Florida. But yeah, I agree. If present yourself the best you can from the beginning,
right?
It sets a tone to what you're willing. How if you're presenting yourself in the public, it shows how you take care of your animals, and I think how you manage your stuff at home too. Your facility and stuff like that.
We definitely put a lot of thought and time into it when it was coming to be. It was weeks, if not months, of going back and forth on different things, and it was kind of. I do feel like I know we were driving when we first mentioned Ectotherm Empire. I don't remember who mentioned it first, but
I did.
Yeah. But when it happened, like it was like, no, that kind of covers what I had in mind. Something that's all inclusive, because it also, allows for if we did decide to get into products or anything else, it still fits that umbrella. You know what I mean?
Correct.
And
Correct.
We knew we definitely didn't want a joke name. There's lots of reptile breeders out. You'll go to the shows, and their name is supposed to be humorous, but I feel like it's kind of disrespectful to the community and the hobby. To some extent, or it's the same joke over and over again. You know who I'm talking about. I don't want to say specific, but there's definitely some things in the hobby where the other breeders can be a little bit immature, and it's fine. But when parents come there with their kids and stuff, we had people ask us at our tables why things are called the things they are, and it's like some people just look at this in a different light. That's the best way I can put it.
And you know what? Our world is, we have our daughters, and we run shows for any Florida shows. Is the whole family, all four of us are out there on our table and stuff like that. And our name, is named after our first Hognose, and it was a joint decision. Actually, my daughter's named it. Like what are we going to name, if we start doing breeding and stuff like that? They're like, oh, let's name after Clover. It's like, okay, cool. One thing I said was, let's do reptiles because we don't know where we're going to be. If this goes longevity, which that was the mindset, I don't know what I'm going to have later down. And now I'm even thinking about, maybe I should have done reptiles and exotic animals,
Oh, yeah.
because it once you're in the world and you start breeding and you're weaving into this web of animal world, it just opens so many so many different ideas and species and stuff like that, where it's hard to just tie yourself to one thing.
Yes. Yeah. And I would never plan on it. Like I said, I mean, there's so much, there's too many options and new things. I don't want to say come out, but I mean, as far as imports and stuff go, different countries open and close. Different breeders start producing something that decades earlier or even last year nobody was producing, and all of a sudden there's this animal available that you were like, man, I'm not going to get that. They're difficult, and now all of a sudden they're available consistently. I mean, a good example is crested geckos. It's not that long ago they were thought to be extinct, and all of a sudden it was like they came in as a thing, and now you can't get away from them. They're everywhere. So it's like
we have them
too. You never know what's going to be available next. So
like you said, you never know what's going to catch your eye at Daytona or any of these big shows, right? You walk by, you're like, hold on, what is that?
I mean, it happened with the day geckos. Like I got my first day gecko in Daytona, and now I work with species almost no one else works with. So it definitely happens. I feel like choosing a business name around that possibility was probably one of the more beneficial things we could have done.
For sure. Another thing too about business name, how you portray yourself is, like I said, to me, it's a family, my family's wholly involved in this. And I think the reptile community is in that switch phase where it was just mostly male dominant back, 10 years, stuff like that, and then, adults and stuff like that. Now where it's becoming a family thing, right?
Yes.
You're seeing a lot more, kids, young kids and stuff like that at these reptile shows, and not just young kids, but kids that are really knowledgeable about, what the reptiles are, morphs and stuff like that.
They're so excited when they see them. They get really excited. And one of the things that's been surprising me from doing the shows is one of the things I like to ask people to kind of like break the ice at the shows is, well, what do you keep? And what always surprises me is how many people at the shows don't keep anything.
Yeah.
They don't have one yet. Like they came to the show with the idea, like, let's see what's out there. And they don't know. They have no idea what's even an option. They might have been to a pet store and seen a sulcata tortoise and a bearded dragon, and they think that's it. And there's so much variability currently, that you can get good quality bred animals for.
Yeah. Like one of my soft spots is when I see like a little girl, because I have 2 daughters, come up and it's like, I want a hog nose, and then you have the supporting parent too.
Yes.
Like, whatever it takes for them to take a hog nose home that day, I'm willing to help out. If it's a price reduction or something like that, given the correct information, I'm willing to help out. And then having my daughters at certain shows with me helps as well, because they have information they give and they connect with the kids too.
The younger audience,
Correct, So it's really cool to bring that dynamic to the reptile world, and I think it's just going to be, I say I'm raising right now to the next generation of reptile keepers and breeders.
Yes.
I mean, at least I hope that they continue this when I'm old and stuff like that. Which I think it will happen.
Parents with open minds is one of the best things because we have so many people that are going out there just killing snakes because they're snakes, because they've been grown or raised to fear them, and having a parent that has that open mind that's willing to be like, as long as you take care of it and you understand this kind of responsibility, I'm totally open to it. I may not like it myself, but we're willing to give it a shot. That helps kind of start erasing that fear and that resentment of an animal that doesn't deserve it.
And also loving animals ourselves, like being able to talk with younger people that are excited about animals, and not just like, oh, it's one of the things that keeps us going, I think, because with with reptiles being as seasonal as they are, and I mean, keeping reptiles is a very roller coaster of emotion, especially during breeding season. So one of the things that really kind of keeps you going is talking to people that get excited.
Yes.
We don't spend a whole lot of time talking to other breeders. Not that there's any specific reason for that, but I don't spend a lot of time on the phone. So I don't talk to a lot of people other than
time just slips by.
I agree. Yeah.
Meaning to message some of them or call them, but most of the guys like chatting on the phone, and I just don't even think about it until I don't have the opportunity to.
We'll see him in Daytona, and it's been a year since we spoke to him. You know what I mean?
And then we'll sit there and talk to him until 4:00 in the morning or something like that.
Yeah.
Because we're stuck in a conversation about genetics or something.
That is. Do you guys have any other local breeders in your area and stuff like that?
We're close to Jeff Goldblatt.
Yeah, hardcore hognose is close. I know a bunch of people that breed other things. As far as hognose go, I believe the only one is Jeff at this point.
Yeah,
I think there's someone in Brooksville that might work with them. I've met quite a few people in person. It's one of the things that I offer. Like when it comes to buying hognose from us, if you're within the state of Florida, sometimes like we'll split a drive or something like that to meet you out there, so we don't have to worry about shipping.
Yeah,
we have to find a new restaurant,
and we get to try food somewhere else because we both love going out to eat and trying different places, since we're in a very barren area for unique foods. But it's I've had plenty of chances to meet with people and sell them animals. It's just a matter of if they got to the point of potentially getting into breeding.
And you know what, like you guys, like Andrew, you were saying that you knew you were getting reptiles, and that was going to be a point that you were going to breed. Like there was not even a second thought about that.
No,
right?
It was not a second thought.
And then there's some people that are just one animal, and that's really it, and that's fine.
I don't believe that exists, but yeah,
it does.
They just don't know any better. Yeah, they think they want one.
You know what it is? Either they don't have the space, or they're not old enough to be able to fully take it and stuff like that.
That has been one of the things with the hognose that's been really interesting, is especially the males. They do require so little space. We've sold a lot to people in college dorm rooms.
Yes,
that's been a really popular thing because they can keep an animal. Somebody who wants animals, who's had animals their whole lives, but they can't keep what they normally keep. And we've actually done a decent amount of males for that. Specifically for that.
Yeah, we had one that we sold to a girl down in St. Pete. And I even took it back in and kept it in a terrarium off to the side in our quarantine area while, she was away on a vacation and she couldn't take it with her or something like that, while school was out. And so when she came back to school, I met her back up and got her snake back.
Yeah. And that's interesting too, because
with that.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I tell people is, a lot of people, well, how big does it get, right? And you tell them the size, their general size of them, and they're like, "Oh, that's not that big. It's small." I go, "Yeah, it's a great snake, especially I think in the climate of how, our living spaces are generally getting smaller and smaller.
Yes.
I think it's a great animal to have that you don't need to have a large, 2 foot, enclosure or something like that.
Her tiny little geckos take up much more space than the hognose. There's like a 4-inch gecko gets a massive tank,
Yeah. So I think that's a great, benefit about hognose. And it's funny because you say about, the girl going away and you guys keeping it. We donated a hognose to my daughter's middle school. They have an animal program there. So my daughter actually has it in the terrarium in her room right now, because she's gonna keep it during the summer while school's out and stuff.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I think that was a cool thing. We were able to convince the principal he's definitely afraid of snakes, but we were able to convince him that it was a good animal to add to their program and stuff like that.
And that's now you're introducing all those other kids to snakes. So their parents may be telling them, they're scarier than this, but they're sitting there looking at their doofy little faces, going, "Why are you scared of that thing?" And it just. The more people have experiences with them, the better. And that's definitely how we feel.
Yeah, education is one of the top tier things I think that we need to do as breeders and people that have the experience with the animals.
Yeah, there's no secrets to hide. There's nothing worth keeping back.
I'll say when I started, because it was a long ways back, I ended up meeting this. I worked at a pet store for a while, and I ended up meeting this one guy that worked there, and he was an importer in the 80s, and so he'd been working in reptiles for his whole life. And when I started talking with him, he started introducing me to other people and started introducing me to the way things work. And they were so secretive about everything. If somebody was able to produce something, they didn't tell anybody how they did it. And that was kind of like, that was the mentality, was like, well, I'm going to be the only person who breeds this. And it's like, but that doesn't work. You know, like as far as for building an audience and building a hobby, you know, like if you only have 3 people to sell stuff to because they're the only ones that know how to do it, that's a really small group. And I definitely feel very strongly that.
Plus, how valuable is the spread of genetics at that point?
Yeah,
like inbreeding, if you're the only one
who knows. And so that's one of the things we're real big on is if you have any questions at all, we'll talk to you. You know, there's nothing. We all do things a little different too. You know, I mean, the guys up north, they're able to just leave their animals in their shed and let nature do its course for winter. And we have an entire room turned into a wine cooler. And I know a lot of people do the individual wine coolers. We did that for a while. And there's so many different methods to get the same result. If we don't share what we're doing, you know what I mean? We're not going to get better at it. I only have my animals to base my results off of. If I have a real bad season, you know, I'm talking to everyone else going, hey, what did you have happen? Like, how can we do better next year? Last year was pretty slow. You know, this year here we did much better.
Yeah. Since we're talking about education, I want to share you guys' what's it called? Website, because like I said, it definitely was a good source of information, stuff like that. Where do you guys have like your Western hognose care and stuff? I think you guys might be the only ones that have a website set up like this for Western hognose that I've
specific for Western hognose. Yeah,
correct. That I've come across.
And a big part of that was because when we were learning ourselves, I could tell just from reading the reading through it, it was written for corn snakes, and they just copy pasted corn snake and put in hognose. And it's like, this information is not accurate. It's not going to get us where we need to be. And so that was a big part of it. And like she said, it's a little wordy. She wrote it, but the more information you have, you can. I
have a hard time cutting down. Condensing the words I use. Like I'm not very trite.
So, you know, brumation, you guys have, you know, prey size, so feeding guide, brumation, a little bit more feeding, basic aid care. You went very detailed on a lot of this stuff. Like I said, I've read it through it. And then you guys also have the morph stuff.
Some of them.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up.
I was going to say, who's in charge of keeping this up?
She does everything.
I do all of the website stuff. And unfortunately, like, I keep meaning to set like 1 or 2 nights a week to like work on it for a couple of hours, because that would allow me to catch up somewhat. But it's just...
Yeah. And anything social media, online, Morph Market, Facebook, Instagram, any of that communication is all her. Part of that is... I don't want to do it. And then the other part is that if you have one point of contact, it's much easier than, well, this person told me this price or this ship date or this, and it gets lost. So she deals with all the communication and then tells me when and where I need to be.
Yeah. Or the other thing is like, well, I thought you were going to do it, right?
Right, yeah.
It's just like,
I thought you were going to message that person back, but that was 3 days ago. No.
Yeah.
None of that. Yeah, she's the soul.
Yeah, but sometimes I have that problem too. And that's with myself.
Yeah.
So, Erin, let me ask you, with your, you know, professional background and stuff like that, did it help out, especially doing some of this, you know, genetic explanations and stuff like that?
A lot of it. Primarily just because I was able to find the very much easier to understand terms and definitions that were more likely to apply to snakes. Because unfortunately, when you're doing the research and compiling everything, people have a tendency to combine like genetics of humans and compare them to like genetics of horses and horse coats and everything. And I've seen that in like group chats before. And, you know, they're different animals.
Yeah.
And it can be entirely different. And like in the case of hognose snakes, we don't have codominant genes so far. Like we haven't found any. And so, you know, you have to redefine how you approach the situation based on the animal you're working with.
Yeah, some of the terminology used as a community is inaccurate.
Yes.
And we'll try to point that in the right direction as best we can. And I know a lot of it's not going to go away because it has been in the hobby for a long time. And it's one of the issues. I don't want to say it's an issue, but it's one of the things when we find new hognose people that are interested, they want to know about a specific trait or morph, and they want to know why it's named what it is. If that's not what it's actually representing. What's that?
I need to go back through and update.
Okay. Yeah. And then you do have a care guide. I mean, okay, you have it written out here. But do you guys have like a PDF form of a care guide and stuff like that, right? If I'm not wrong.
I mean, I have it saved in a document form.
Gotcha.
And I have it as a PDF, I think, I also am the administrator for the Hognose Snake Keepers group on Facebook.
Okay.
And then there's 3 other moderators, administrators that I work with for that. And we do keep those guides up and available for new keepers because that particular group is geared towards trying to introduce people with as much information as possible and get them started in a successful way. That way they have what they need to be successful.
Instead of showing off pictures of the cool new snake you produced and information.
What was the name of that group you said?
Hognose Snake Keepers.
Hognose Snake Keepers. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll have to check that out. I don't think I've come across that one.
Yeah, and if you happen to I'm actually in the need of another admin mod because unfortunately, myself and the other girls are kind of a little swamped right now, and it would help out. But if anyone's interested and has experience with hognose snakes and guiding people through responsible social media interactions, we don't allow bullying. We don't allow harassment. I am just as happy to kick someone and ban them from the group for life as I am to deal with any of that. In fact, I prefer it, honestly.
I think that's a very important thing where someone goes out to social media, whichever platform it is, ask a question. Instead of getting the information, they get shunned or, told that they're exactly.
Yeah, nobody knows anything until you learn it. You can't expect somebody to come in knowing something. Correct. It's just not going to work.
100%.
And it's not fair to assume it, and it's not fair to bully them because they're, they have the responsibility to ask the question, then they're doing so. Yeah. It's if you don't want to answer it, that's fine.
Yeah,
but
don't answer it. Yeah, there's no reason to insult them.
Yeah, getting on their case is it's not fair. And it really dissuades people from learning. And when you get attacked enough, you don't want to listen when someone tells you something that's valuable.
Yeah. And here's one thing. We were all in those shoes one time.
Yes.
Right. We were all there. So when you look back and, realize okay, I remember coming into this blind and I have no idea. Right. Hard scales is mentioned in your website. Like I said, they relied it on heavily stuff like that. So it is cool to see that your guys' work is going to a good cause and people are using it,
And I'm always open to having suggestions if anyone wants to see, in addition to the post for the care guides or anything like that. I was just talking earlier about building a bioactive tank, and
so we have our own experience.
So we have our own experience building the bioactive tank, so I can write a guide for it because I don't write the guides for things that I haven't done. And so I can't really advise on heating and light sources if I haven't used them myself. It's just one of those things that I don't have that.
All of these are bioactive, but there's no hognose.
I could write those relatively easy enough, but when it comes to hognose, I haven't done it yet.
Yeah. And
so it's one of those things where that's on the list as well as continuing the morph sections. But sometimes the morph sections are a difficulty too. With some of the morphs, I contacted the creators and said, how do you ID this morph? What are the distinguishing characteristics? And they said, well, it's green and it kind of looks like a hypo. And it's like, well,
that's not
helpful.
information at all.
How am I supposed to relay that in a way where
Yeah.
it's clear and, succinct enough for people to understand?
I agree.
As one of the things too, with so many different people breeding at the same time and everything, even with Arctics, you can get a massive variety of what people consider Arctics, and it really comes down to knowing your own lineage and being able to differentiate what you're working with, because what the gene does and how it presents is going to depend on every other gene that's stuck in that animal. I'm not just talking about albino and axanthic and, but everything, when you're breeding, there's a lot more than just the labels we write on the animal we're selling it. There's a lot going on that isn't tracked.
Yeah.
And
and getting into the breeding aspect of stuff, we had mentioned something about brumation, stuff like that. What is your guys' process for brumation and stuff? Like, everybody, like you guys, everybody has a little tweak to everything.
What we're doing currently, I guess we've done it 3 years now. It sounds about right. Probably about 3 years. We did the wine coolers for a while, and I was very happy with them. Open the doors, burp the containers, keep an eye on them. We moved all the snakes into one room. So we have all our breeders in one room. We have our quarantine in another section, completely separate. Then we have our babies completely separate from those. So it's we have everything separated out. So we had a room where it's like, if we could just cool this room, that would solve the brumation problem. And I found a product called Coolbot Pro, which is essentially it hooks to Wi-Fi, and you hook it up to a standard AC unit, a wall unit, and what it does is it's got a heater on it, and it'll heat up the probe on the AC unit, so the AC unit thinks it's 120 degrees inside your room, and it'll drop temperature quick. And I honestly, when we set it up, I was like, man, I don't know if this is going to work. It was like an experiment, and I turned it on for the first time, and the room was like 30. We didn't have any animals in it. It was completely empty. The room was like 32 degrees in like 20 minutes. I was like, well, that's a lot colder than I thought I could get there in Florida. Like, I was like, it is freezing in here.
I mean, you know what it's like in Florida. Like, we have 80-degree winter days. We have almost 100-degree winter days at times. Like, it's not consistent enough to be able to, isolate them in a shed and be like, okay, that's good.
Yeah. So we started using that, and it made it our favorite part about it, at least my favorite part about it, is the animals get to stay in their bin. I'm never moving them to Tupperware containers. They're in the bin they're going to breed in. They're in the bin they've been in for the rest of the year. So there's none of that back and forth. We're also able to control the light cycles in the room with timers. So the lights that are on during the breeding season, we just shorten the daylight cycle to probably 8 hours.
Yeah.
I think it's 8 hours. And this year here, I dropped them down to 53 degrees, and I stagger it down, and then I stagger it out.
That's this Coolbot Pro. Research. I think you guys just dropped a really good knowledge right here with Coolbot Pro, because I believe some people probably have tried the air unit to try to do a whole room and stuff like that, and just running a window unit is not going to do it.
It's not enough.
No.
Yeah. Is there a specific size window unit that you guys are using?
Our room is probably like 10 by 8. It's a relatively small room, and I think we have an 18,000 BTU unit. It's relatively large, but I think the whole product was less than $1,000 to do the whole room, and we bought temporary insulation when we did it, and I have since removed that insulation because it's not needed. It just shrank the room another 2 inches. You know what I mean? Which is already
having a skirt on the door was enough.
To keep it. Yeah.
Like, you just have that stick-on skirt down at the bottom of the door that seals off that one gap.
And we use the room for storage during winter too. So whenever we have to get anything out of the room, we bring it out in the house, and it's freezing.
You get your jacket, your hoodie.
But I mean, it's a relatively small house. There's nothing fancy about the walls or insulation or anything, and we don't have any additional insulation other than over the 2 windows. I cover the windows in the purple foam you can buy at Home Depot. It's like 1.5 inches thick.
Okay, yeah.
And so that's been our way of doing it for a little while. I really like it for convenience. With the Coolbot Pro, I get there's an app on my phone. I get notifications if power goes out, anything crazy like that. So we do most of our traveling during winter because all the animals are asleep, essentially. So we can't travel now. We can't go on vacation right now because now it's work time. So like we'll be up in Pennsylvania and I'll get a notification like I lost power in the room, and I know that, just thanks to the cool bot lets me know what's going on. I track the temperatures, and even sometimes when it gets cold out at night, I start to worry like, is it going to get too cold? Those 3 days a year where Florida actually does cool down. But so far it's been pretty consistent.
Gotcha. Yeah, I want to say thank you to Jermaine Shoveling Those Hogs for the super chat. Thank you for the support. And then, so what are you guys brewmating in? What kind of substrate?
I just keep them on aspen. Same as what we use the rest of the year. I know a lot of people have breeding season. Yeah, minus breeding season. We keep them on paper. Reason. I know a lot of people moved away from aspen. We've always had good luck with it. But when we're breeding, when we're pairing males and females, to remove the dust, we use paper. And we get those from
Reptile Basics.
No,
it's the Reptazorb paper. Shipping Supplies or something like that.
Yeah, Superior Shipping Supplies is the website.
Okay.
And we get the papers from them. It's not actually paper. It's almost like a fabric. It's real thick, real absorbent. And we do that for a couple reasons. We did have problems with some hemipene infections early on when we were just leaving them on aspen. And then it also makes it real easy for daily cleanings. So, you're just taking a piece of paper, throw another piece of paper, clean it, throw another piece of paper in. So especially during breeding season, we're feeding the females every 3 days. They're defecating pretty much every day. So, you're just trying to keep everything as clean as you possibly can. And the papers really help with that. It's real easy to miss something in bedding. At least that's.
Yeah. And I mean, you can track breeding behavior too, based on the paper too.
Yeah. You can see when there's been
action.
There is evidence left behind. So
yeah. Billy, thanks for the super chat. Thank you for the support. And that's very interesting because, like you said, I've moved away from aspen for my breeders and my whole back stuff. I'm doing a coco core play sand mix.
I know a lot of people are doing that. It's been very, very common. I don't know.
Last year I did one female. I wanted to try it out and stuff like that, and then she did very well. No changes in feeding behavior, anything, breeding behavior, none of that stuff. So this year, once it came out of brumation, I put everything on there. Been really good. It's actually pretty cool because since the sand, it comes almost up like a cat litter too. So it's really easy to scoop out and throw everything out.
I was gonna ask if you did like a bioactive kind of thing.
I haven't jumped to that yet, but I think it's a plan.
It's in the works.
Yeah. We'll see how that goes. Do a year or two with this and see how much upkeep. Because one thing it is, you do have to mist it because it dries out real quick.
That's been was always one of my concerns.
Yeah,
because the coco core holds moisture until it doesn't.
Correct.
Even when it's in an incubator and you set your moisture, and normally by the time you're pulling your eggs, it's starting to get a little less. So I was curious how well it held moisture.
Yeah. So I basically clean, spot clean, a couple of times a week, and then when it gets down, probably like moisture, like a good moisture lasts about 2 weeks. And then I'll just grab like the big bowls of water and then just dump it in there and mix it. And then it holds pretty good. And my thought to doing it too was, all right, because I had coco core in the lay boxes. So they're laying their eggs on coco core and sand, I incubate in coco core and perlite mix. I was like, why not keeping, and just being
makes sense.
all general. And then the neutral pH balance on coco core, it's a good bacteria, fighter and stuff like that.
As far as eggs and incubation go, we do the coco core for the base, and then I use sphagnum on top because it's antimicrobial as well. So I just set it across the top to kind of help try to keep any dye that get fungal will stick to that one egg is normally the goal.
And if there's condensation, it gets absorbed.
It absorbs, so you never have to worry about dripping on. You give it a little cover.
Drown the eggs.
Yeah. When we first started, we used those containers where it's all above the water, and we drowned a really nice batch of eggs in the beginning, and then that was we're like, well, moving away from that and went back to something a little more natural.
So you guys do moist coco core as the base, lay the eggs in, and then put moist damp.
I don't know. I actually put the sphagnum in dry and just let it poof to whatever its natural moisture level is, and it because all stuff in the incubator, you always get that condensation level on top, and it'll always build droplets. So it gives you just that cover. Anything that drops is going to drop on the sphagnum, and it's just, for me, it helps keep that moisture off the eggs directly, because I don't know if yours do it, but we get a lot of females who actually bury their eggs after they lay them.
Yes.
So it naturally they would be completely covered. So leaving them exposed isn't really a benefit. Like having them covered by something does seem to actually.
Now let me ask you, when it's close to the eggs pipping, do you guys remove the sphagnum moss or just leave it as is? At
53 days, I pull the sphagnum, and that's when I start keeping an eye on them. Normally, we have most of our stuff is between 53 and 58 days. And we had one batch last year where I pulled the sphagnum, and all the snakes had hatched, left the eggs. I'm like, I have no idea when they hatched, but they shouldn't have been out yet. So normally it's good. It's only happened to us once. It was like 8 snakes were just like, I pulled it, went, all these eggs are empty. No, well, the king snakes did it too, but no, it was one batch of hog nose.
And I like that idea with sphagnum moss, because I cover my eggs too with a dry layer of cocoa core, you know, for that same fact.
Same idea.
But then I have to try to like scoop it up to, you know, move it out of the way. So I like the sphagnum moss. You could just grab
a big clump. Normally it wants to stay together, so I can take a big chunk off at once. Unfortunately, it gets everywhere, so you know you have to vacuum every time you.
I mean,
which are dog gloves.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, and you know that's part of it. Like the cocoa core, aspen, the dust, it's part of it. You know, it's gonna get all over the floor. It gets dusty. You know, that's one thing it's funny today. I was looking at my room. It's like, man, I need to dust some of these ledges and stuff like that. You know, because it's starting to, you know, clump up and stuff like that, like the dust from the cocoa core. Or the aspen.
We do like a pretty good, like serious deep cleaning right before brumation, where I clean all the shelves with the hydrogen peroxide and, you know, do everything, get everything kind of straightened out right before they go in, you know, clean up as much of that as you can. Because this time of year, I feel like you just be chasing yourself.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, no, for sure. Yeah. That's
there's just no, like, you do your best to keep it clean, but, you know, when one day the bin is paper, the next day it's because also I do lay boxes in some of the larger bins, but a lot of the time, since the snakes seem to miss the lay boxes anyways, I'll just do the entire bin in cocoa core. They can't miss that way. You know what I mean? So,
you know, let me ask you that because I tried this year. I tried first set of eggs just in cocoa core. I was like, okay, the whole bin is there. There's a whole lay box. Have you guys had any issues with the females eating their eggs without a lay box?
No more than with a lay box. So I had to wrestle one egg out of a female this year. But other than that, I don't think we've lost any. Which of course it was a Bub's daddy trying to eat her eggs. And I was like she was fine. I grabbed the egg, and as I'm taking it out, she grabbed it in my hand. And I'm like,
no way.
She just saw a movement. It was like, all right, it's feeding time.
It is one of our strongest feeding lines. So it's not surprising that she thinks that she's getting a mouse, so she's just going to bite on.
Yeah, that's all they do is eat. So
yeah, for sure. You know, and it's funny because like the first female I had laid, Ezlin did the change as well. And I was talking to him that day. I go, so how's it going? Because his female started laying before me. He goes, hey, I think there's an issue. He goes, the females are eating their eggs. I don't know why. And I go, let me go check, because I have a female that should be laying any day now. I go and pull the bin open, and she had just finished laying her egg. And as I pull the bin open, she's opening her mouth and grabs the egg. And I go, oh my God. I try to get her off the egg, but she already has sunk her, you know, her fang into it and stuff like that. So then I added lay boxes.
I was going to say, if you ever get an egg where it does get a puncture in it, I don't know if you've ever tried the coffee filter trick, but just take a small piece of coffee filter and set it over, and it will patch the egg. So we've actually had I don't want to say quite a few, but enough to say that is a functional method for sealing up an egg. And even if they've lost a lot of fluid, it will rebuild back.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, because
I had one that
especially early on.
Yeah, especially like because we've had females where they just had thin eggs. You know, like you go to pick them up and they'll get a split in them just from touching them. And I've had some pretty big slits. Put a little coffee filter over it, and then they went full term and hatched babies out. So
okay, that's really good. Yeah, because I've used the just the like paper towel, you know, and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah,
similar thing. But I had one egg this year that was deflated, and I go, okay, it's done, you know. But knowing that I didn't even think about trying it just to try to see if it fills up.
Yeah,
it's good to know that it
will. Yeah, it takes time. But we had some that I'd say were probably 40-50% deflated that came back.
The puppies.
Yeah, a very loud squeaky ball that she knows.
She wants some attention.
I'm gonna get your attention.
Yeah.
Thank you, Harper Hardman's, Alicia. Thank you for the support as well. You guys are getting a lot of love tonight. A lot of people are here. I think you guys have become a staple in the hognose community. With your information, I think, was it last year? I came by your guys' table and just chit-chatted during Daytona, and same thing, right? You guys, we just sat there and talked about stuff, and then Orlando, we talked about our RBE as well. So I think you guys are doing the right thing, and supporting each other and the hognose community.
Well, we like to talk about our passions, like
100%.
You want to share that with people, especially with people who share it as well. And so, you don't want to limit the amount of people that you're appealing to just because they're new or something like that. Like it's just, it's not reasonable for one as a business, and two, it's not fair. I would have loved to have had people or to have known that this existed when I was a kid. I didn't know.
For sure.
I didn't know until I met him that the reptile hobby was a thing.
She didn't even know aquarium stores really existed. Right? Our second date, I took her to a coral shop, and she's like, "What's this?"
Cool. Yeah. Have you guys been to Aquashella?
No.
You have to go. It is really cool, and they have it in Daytona.
Okay.
Yeah. We vended last year. Me and Eslin vended a booth. They let a handful of reptile people in, and I was more, about walking around and seeing the corals and checking out some sturgeons and stuff. That was really cool.
Yeah.
So if you guys have a chance, go check it out. I think this year I'm gonna take
similar shared hobbies.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my more frequent communications with one of my prior customers, he used to raise coral and breed fish and everything, breed discus and all those other things. We all have a very close-knit hobby, even if the animals are different.
Yes.
It starts crossing very there's very thin lines there.
Generally, if you like animals, you like animals. It's really just as simple as that.
Yeah, for sure. An incubation, you guys had said earlier, you have the sea serpent incubators.
Yes.
What temperature are you guys incubating at?
81.5.
For the low one.
For the
higher one. Right now, we have another one that's set a little bit lower that I keep day gecko eggs in.
So as I get room in the other one, I'm going to transition minutes. I'm going to put a few extra days on them, but our main incubator is already full. I'm really big on not all my eggs in one basket, so we made a decision early on. Instead of buying one big incubator, we bought two. I like redundancy and backup.
No, I agree. And tying into the story earlier about the hurricane, the eggs and stuff like that. We have a little, we have some issues that we have to deal with. We deal with living in Florida. That's hurricanes, power outages and stuff like that. What is your guys' plans and stuff like that for hurricanes, and if either if it's
really
cremation,
either cremation or egg hatching season and stuff like that.
At this point here, and we do have a generator. We've been lucky enough in the past few storms that we haven't lost power for any significant length of time, where we've had to turn, to use the generator. But having the AC that's normally for the cooling room, it is large enough to keep the house at least at a survivable temperature for everything. More importantly, I think even because the eggs, I think would probably be all right. You just have to try to keep them, in the lower 80s, which we'd be able to do. So I don't know. I know when I used to keep frogs, I used to do ice on top of the frog cages because that would be enough to cool them, to keep them alive when we lost power. And I actually had to do that a few times. But for the snakes, we haven't actually had.
Well, it was just Irma when we had our first clutch first two clutches hatching.
And we didn't have that much. We bagged up everything and took it with us.
We took all the animals with us. Like we even took the racks with us because at the time, like we couldn't really afford losing the racks either. Like if something had happened to our house.
We can't leave.
Now
There's hunkering down and
we took I mean our incubator was like a cooler at the time that he had just built to be an incubator.
We did lose our coral tank during Irma, so that was rough, so there are some things where you can't, you can only do as much as you can do.
Yeah. Right now it's more or less we pretty much just have to ride it out here because unfortunately like the snakes could be packed up and taken away, but
the geckos
I have to try to catch all of the geckos and try to, pack them and take them away. Like it's not possible to fit that into all the other hurricane prep you have to do because it's so quick and all at once that for the most part, it's almost impossible. Like
they boot us out early for whatever reason. It's like 3 days before the storm. They're like, you got to decide, are you staying or going? And then we're stuck here sitting and going like, it's really outside. I can't leave my house because if I cross that road over there, they won't let me back.
We're in a mandatory zone, but we're not in a flood zone. We have a high enough elevation where if our road floods, most of the houses on the road will flood before we ever get water.
The bottom of our house is taller than our neighbor's house, so we're okay. I'm on top of a hill.
So we don't really have the concern with the flooding. It's just going to be more or less like, damage to the house, in which case there's only so much you can really do.
Correct.
So
and that's very interesting. Once your collection get as big as you guys have, about how many hognose you guys think you have keepers, not counting babies?
I think I counted just around 100 when I had to reapply for the FWC permit. And then
I think it was like 48 females this year, if I remember my count.
Okay.
So that sounds about right because we usually try to have at least one male or two males per female. In breeding season, we run 2 males per female if we can. There's only a few where we say this is the only one you get. Like, good luck.
We're counting on them.
And then, how many other species do you guys have?
Not a whole lot. We do the neotropical puffing snakes. We have a pair of those. We have a pair of the what are those house snakes?
Aurora
house snakes.
Okay.
We have a pair of milk snakes, and we have a couple Florida kings. We have some crested geckos, and then it gets into the day geckos, and that's all her.
It's like 4 or 5 different species of day geckos. I think it's 4.
And we got some Legodactylus Williamsi, and then the Phelsuma.
Okay.
Variety.
So, like you guys said, you guys have not just a hognose. You guys have a decent, diverse collection and stuff like that.
If I could afford the space and the time and the money for more day geckos, I'd probably do more day geckos as well. But as you can see, it takes up a lot of space, and this isn't even all the adult cages. Like there's 2 more on the bottom, there's 2 over here,
and all the babies get individual cages. So
the babies get individual nano cages, like this big.
And sometimes we're trying to sell geckos just because we have nowhere to put more. It's like if anything else hatches, we have no more room. Somebody please.
And that's partially because of the cresteds, because the cresteds all have their own as well. So they're they take over my day gecko tanks.
And they're less important.
I mean, I guess like they don't require the UV at least. So like if I have to shuffle them around, so the tank isn't on a UV spot, like that's fine. I can put a crested there kind of thing. But for the most part, the day geckos do have extra requirements when it comes to UV lighting.
For sure. So
it's mostly just those. It's a little bit of variety, not a whole lot. Like we found that when we really dive into something, we kind of don't do so great. So we try to limit it.
If you get too many things with too many different care requirements, you're much more likely to make a mistake. So staying consistent has definitely helped. Like when I bred stuff when I was younger, when I was doing the boas and stuff, like I'd have bearded dragons and Uromastics and small monitors. I'm trying to think what the Ackies, and I had a huge variety of stuff all at the same time, and frogs and fish. And the more stuff you get all at once, the more likely you are to, just start making mistakes, especially if you're keeping desert stuff and
correct. The
don't drop those stuff in the same
very
room.
extreme,
which we can't do anyways because we dropped that one room down, winter. So anything that's in that room has to be able to be in a brumation state, essentially. And so like that's kind of why we dropped. We had all the South American hognose species.
Madagascar hognose species.
Madagascar. Yeah, sorry.
I wish we could get South America.
We did have a South American hognose at one point in time, but we had all the Madagascar species, and we just we weren't happy with the amount of care that we could give them and the amount of space we could give them.
Yeah, I'm happy to see a lot of people having more success with the giants. They're a wonderful snake.
They're cool.
Ours really liked slinging poop, and they're big, and it was not fun.
I didn't have that problem.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking to get some this year. I think that's a cool part that you can keep them in groups. So I'm definitely want to plan to be able to keep them all together.
They're very cool animals.
They're
definitely a different type of care, different level, different style.
For sure.
Yeah. They're called hognose, but they really don't. They're not really like hognose.
Different behaviors, different. Very different.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine Western hognose behavior in a giant hog, Madagascar.
No, that would be really dramatic. Yeah, that'd be crazy.
It's actually closer to maybe Eastern hognose behavior or something, or maybe Mexican hognose behavior compared. Because they were all mostly really hissy, really temperamental. And I mean, our Mexicans were like that. Like you hear them hissing when you were in the other room and you were nowhere near them. They just get angry.
This shadow and
I mean, they're amazing and they're fun, but sometimes it's better to limit yourself.
Focus.
And focus. So you don't start hurting the animals that you're taking in and that you're responsible for.
Yeah.
Because they're they're relying on you for their health.
Especially when you're trying to do any kind of morph or anything too, because it is hard to just keep one. So if you are getting different species, you add in something new, and then all of a sudden you want to add in the different varieties of that, and now you're just expanding exponentially without any real limit for what you're physically capable of keeping up with. We both have jobs. The amount we can do is the amount we can do.
Yeah.
And sometimes that gets a little questionable. Especially towards like the end of baby season, right around Daytona, essentially.
Oh, that's rough.
Coming around, that's like the worst time anyways. Like that's when I'm the busiest. That's when he's the busiest at work.
Both of our jobs have they're seasonal jobs. And, they have we have work all year, but we both have strong
busy season.
Busy season, and it lines up with our reptile busy season. So it's like all the work we do at the exact same time. It's like, all right, this is going to be your toughest time of the year. Let's go. And it is always kind of fun to switch from the baby season being busy to the selling season, which is a totally different time too. Especially when you're trying to get everything out before December, because all of a sudden your shipping gets cut off after after Black Friday. You can't ship for a little while. You can pick up a little bit in December, whatever, depending on weather. But you can end up selling an animal and you're caring for it for 2-3 months, depending on where it's going.
Correct.
That's its own. The next.
Especially when you're in Florida, like you have good weather, you can ship no problem. But the people over in like Washington State can't receive.
It's 85 degrees here and 28 degrees there. It's like, what? How do I extreme for that? Yeah.
It was like. And with baby season and stuff like that, about how many babies you guys think are producing this year? I'm
at 168 eggs. So there's always some losses in there. We did 128 eggs last year, so we're doing a little bit more this year. I'd say I probably have about 5 females that are still in some form of ovulation, pre-lay, somewhere in progress. I would love to make 200. That'd make me happy, but I don't know if we're gonna make it. That's a good number.
It fluctuates so badly. I mean, like last year was really weird for like everyone that we talked to.
It's
very off. I
think we only have like 3 clutches over 10 eggs this year. We have all very small clutches, 4 eggs, 5 eggs, 8 eggs. I'd say our average is somewhere between 8 and 12 eggs, but anything over 12 is surprising. And we always see on the groups someone be like, "Oh, it's my first year breeding, 25 eggs," and we're sitting there going, How? Like, yeah, like what did you do? What's your magic sauce for that? You know, like I'd love that. I'd love to have a batch that big.
You know, well, which is it could be a curse and a bless, right? Because imagine dropping 25 eggs and then like another 10 eggs from one female.
Yeah.
Right there, that's 30, 40 babies.
It adds
up real quick.
But we, out of our large females, the consistent breeders, you know, the ones that we've had for years and years, only one of them laid eggs this year. The rest of them just didn't do anything. Almost everything we have this year is new breeders.
Wow.
Like
wow.
all I won't say all of them, but I would say at least 50-60% of them are first time or second time breeders.
Yeah.
Whereas like 3 years ago when we had like 300
it was all those big girls.
It was all the big girls. It was all the regular
double clutches
breeders and all that. Like it was double clutches. Like it was a lot. And I mean, it was a lot.
It was a lot. You get up into
too much for us to handle for the most part.
And you know, I think, you know, and from your guys' experience with, you know, a couple years of breeding, there's no really way of expecting how many eggs you're gonna get.
No,
right?
there's
like,
no rhyme or reason.
It's a, you know, like you said, 300 eggs or maybe 100 or 200. Right?
One of our females that's produced for us every season consistently, like good 15, 18 egg clutches. This year here, she doubled with slugs. You know, so it's like slugs in both batches. It's like that's one of those females. Like I'm sitting there going, like that's like guaranteed. You know, like 30 eggs from her. And instead, we got nothing.
And we've had times where you have females that have the behavior, that have the changes in the body and everything, and they have nothing.
Yeah, they'll swell up. You like, man, it's post prelay. She's huge, and then they just go back to normal. You're sitting there going, "What was in you? Like, how did where you know?" Yeah, so
follicles they reabsorbed.
And we had one this year that I was really counting on. She was just massive, and I swore there was you know she was post prelay. I was going to get eggs, and then she went skinny, but. Nothing came out of her. She didn't eat them, you know, because she was skinny. Like they, you know, you'd be able to see them if she ate them. And just, I don't know what happened. You know, you get that every year. There's a couple that just kind of fake you out. We bought a ultrasound years back with the hope of being able to get a little bit more information. But we
hadn't been tried.
It hadn't been tried on. Yeah, so we want to see if we could see follicles and get a better idea on when to pair, because I feel like the window for pairing on hognose is real small compared to some other species. And but we both worked so much, and it was like a 2-man operation. So we never really had that opportunity to get the information, and we ended up just selling it. You know, it definitely worked as an ultrasound, but whether or not you can measure hognose follicles, I have no idea.
Yeah, I tried it this year with one of my friends. He's a ball python breeder, and I was like, "Hey, can you bring your ultrasound? I'm interested to see what you can do." And it's definitely a 2-man job.
Oh yeah,
you have to have patience.
You watch all the YouTube videos with the ball python people, and the snake's just sitting still and like, oh, there they are. I'm like, that's not happening.
No, it's you have to have patience, and I could definitely see, you know, my small collection. Maybe I can do it, but once you get into 20, 30, 40, it'll take you a whole week to ultrasound. Probably.
And if it is, I believe it'd be like probably a 7-day window or less. So if it takes you a week to go through them all, you're gonna miss it anyway. You got to start over as soon as you get to the end.
And unfortunately, we just don't have that time. Like we're gonna prioritize what needs to be done, which is caring for the animals, cleaning, and
checking their follicles. So
and then another, you guys said, you know, you have sometimes you double up the males in the breeding, right? That's a great, you know, what's it called, process to do, because one male might do the job and the other might not, right?
Just because you want that female.
Pair, it doesn't mean she wants that male. And especially with the females being as large as they are, I do believe they have a little bit of choice in the matter, because some males seem to have the right dance moves. Some just some will get every female you put them with, and other males, the females are just not interested.
For sure, yeah. And you know,
Homer, the one you want to be the male, and it's like he's just sitting in the corner doing nothing. You know, like, come on, man.
Like he needs another year to grow and get into his, you know, get his confidence up. If you guys were starting today with your collection, would you get a whole bunch of females, or would you guys get a 1.1? How would that ratio go with your experience?
I would definitely go 1.1. One of the things that I know I have a little bit different opinion on compared to a lot of people, especially people starting out, is you can put all your money into a male because you're going to produce a lot of those babies quickly, especially if you buy a super Arctic, you're going to produce a lot of Arctics, you know. But if you put the money into the female is going to last longer. We have a lot of males we spent big money on that we have since outgrown, So like our first AAA, he was like $1,800 or something, back when AAAs were a lot more money. He was a great breeder, fantastic breeder, but we used him for like 2 seasons before every male we had was better than him. He's still in our racks. He still hangs around. We'll throw him a normal every once in a while. But when
he's a backup.
He's a backup
to see if the female can even go.
Mm-hmm.
But when you buy a nice female with good genetics in the female, you will never stop using that female. You know what I mean? So I definitely say 1.1, but don't always, focus all. I know a lot of people will buy, a het female and then buy a male with a ton of genetics. And I get it. It's going to get you there quicker. But that male is going to get outgrown,
Mm-hmm.
real fast. At least that's the way I see
Plus,
it.
then you could actually invest. I would almost disagree. I would probably go with a couple of females first because you have to get them growing first.
Yeah.
We've never had good experiences really with buying adult females.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Like we did that in our first year.
We were trying to rush it like everyone
with
else.
Everything else, we made the mistakes too, and we didn't succeed with any of it. Like if anything, it was disheartening to see these animals that were just sold to us as virgins that probably were virgins for a reason.
Yeah.
They
didn't produce for them, so then we got them, and they didn't produce for us either.
Yeah. That's a very fine line you can walk, right? And
mm-hmm.
without having a reference or a source or somebody that can really trust, it's very, very a very shot in the dark with.
And even like still, you get them, you put them on a different cycle. You put them down at a different time of year. You kind of throw everything off with just a.
We've had. I think one difference was a couple of years ago. Like our friend Elemental Herps, Kamiko Walker, she decided that she wanted to rehome her Court Gaverth Flamingo Swomas.
Mm-hmm. And we weren't saying
they were
no.
adults.
Yeah.
And so we were instantly grabbing them up because we knew they were nicer than ours because, we shipped them to her. So we knew how nice they were. And they bred for us like the moment they arrived.
Mm.
And so that is like the one time where I think it's actually really worked for us. And we got lucky with that one because usually like different cycles, different areas of the country, doesn't work.
Coming from British Columbia, Canada down to Central Florida had to have been a dramatic change for them, and it worked out for that season.
For sure.
But we also had success with like other animals from Court at the time too. So we knew his line was working for us as well. So, it was kind of a balance.
Yeah. And then for stuff you guys keep, is there a rhyme or reason? Do you guys rather keep males or females or whatever genetics work out?
It depends on the current project.
Okay.
If there's anything that's sitting in the rack where I just can't stop opening the bin, going like, man, this one has my attention. I don't care what it is. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But normally I would say we keep mostly females, partially because it's easier to buy a male from someone else than multiple females from someone else. So people
sell males.
People sell males. Males are much easier to get from other people. That's for sure. We always have more males than females available. And especially if we have a project where we're holding back multiple animals, I'm going to keep the females because I'm not going to keep the males and females from the same project. I'm going to get the males from someone else. You know what I mean? So it's always, I would say we definitely keep more females. We kept some interesting males this year. Have a few that we're keeping, but it's definitely mostly females.
Okay. Yeah. And, and going back to like talking about visual females versus visual males or powerhouse males, there's definitely two different thoughts on that, right?
Yes.
Where, I have a lot of het females, and especially starting off.
Yes.
It was a lot less.
It's a lot easier. Yeah, it's
correct.
Yeah.
Starting
off faster.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, having powerful males. Now, last year, producing some stuff, I kept a lot of females, visual females, so now that I'm able to cherry pick and keep producing.
It makes it easier.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It's kind of easier to start off with the het females and then eventually work into.
Have you guys ever had animal females or males that you've bought, as hatchlings, grown them up, especially females, I say, because much longer time they need to grow up and be able to breed and not be good breeders?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I would say the standout one for us was we bought a Sunburst back when Sunbursts were $6,500. And we put that male to as many females as we'd let him have over the years when we tried him 5 seasons, and then never produced a single egg. With multiple females, with females that have laid with other males, with good breeding females, he never produced a viable egg. And we sold him this past season as a non-breeding male, I think for $600 or something.
Like 600.
Yeah. So it's like, you got 5 years of work and multiple $1,000s in this animal
for it too, because it was a deal for art commissions. And so technically I'm still paying for it for an animal I no longer have, for an animal that has never produced for us at all. And the last year when we paired him, we gave him 2 females that were known really good breeders.
That were consistent every year breeders.
They did absolutely nothing.
The genetics would have been terrible. It wasn't even about that. We're just like this is
just
your
want to see if
you
can produce.
Can you produce for us? And
that's what we'll do with females too. If we have a female that hasn't produced, which we have, we still have plenty of those too. We'll pair them to males that we know have been like beasts that have bred almost everything.
And we've had some redemptions, and we've had some where it's finally like, all right, it's time for this female to go. And when we sell them, we always let everybody know that we've had this animal, we've tried for this many seasons, we've got nothing out of it. I mean, some of them not even duds, like they never ovulated, and it's just like at some point you just kind of be like, all right, it's
and
time.
It might change for
somebody else might have whatever the secret is to get that female triggered.
Yeah, that's what I say. Like.
We don't usually go down and stroke them the way that some people do. Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
It's the right place, right time, and
some of my favorite animals have been ones that just won't do anything. And unfortunately, it's part of it. It is one of the things that, like I said, the seasons this time of year is a roller coaster. You have high highs and low lows, and when you have that giant female that's just massive, and you're sitting there going, "Oh, I can't wait for these eggs," and then she finally lays them, and nothing's fertile. You're sitting there going. It's like it's crushing.
And we've invested in a lot of giant projects. I mean, we've been investing in sables since we started.
Yeah, it was one of the earlier things we had, and this past season was the first year we produced sables in any kind of numbers. Like we produced them previously,
and then this year there's not going to be that many.
This year here, like all the sable stuff just was like, nah, we're not doing it this year.
I mean, the first year we got
batches of eggs in the incubator
a pair of pink pastel makers, and we got nothing on that. But then this year we have a ton of pink pastel animals.
Yeah, I got 4 clutches of pink pastel stuff. Where previous years, like I couldn't get anything pink pastel. Yeah. It's like pink pastels this year. Like it's
fluctuates.
You never know.
Yeah. It's like farming, right? It's you gotta go buy an farmer's almanac and see the stars align and stuff like that.
Just have lots of backups and be prepared for disappointments.
Kevin mutant geckos or mutant reptiles now. Throw on some Barry White.
He got the Woma from us, I believe.
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah, he's
2 years ago.
So it's very interesting because, like you said, we were talking about earlier, you can't count exactly what you're going to get. You can expect. Now
you just prepare for the most.
Yeah. Have you guys thought about, especially with the hognose, what's your max number of breeders?
We haven't limited that, mostly because we still have space in the room.
We have slowed down on purchasing though.
Yeah, we slowed down on purchasing mostly because we've learned that our holdbacks do better for us than buying from other people usually. And it's unfortunate. It might just be because we live in a different area of the country than some of the other people that we buy from, or the stress of rehoming, or who knows what.
Yeah, I've talked to some other breeders that they won't buy anything unless they can get it at a relatively young age. Like if it's been at another facility for multiple months, they're not interested, just because they've had the same situation where when you get these animals that once they've grown so much, it seems harder to get them to transition whatever your cycling is, your feeding schedule, your breeding schedule. If you have them from the beginning, they seem to have a little bit stronger for that, which is tough, because you can't just buy locally. You can't buy from the same person either. You have to diversify your genetics. So
you buy too young and it might not have never eaten, and then you might not ever get it to eat. Like we had a couple of those last year or the year before.
Yeah, and it's always the best looking ones. You're sitting there looking at this animal that's like absolutely crazy looking, and it just looks at you like, I don't want to eat that. You try toads, you try scenting, you try salmon, every trick that anybody else says this is the magic. I've tried a no legs because people have told me that that's like the trick. Occasionally get one that's just like food is not what it's interested in, and then occasionally you'll have one that won't eat for 6 months, won't eat at all, and one day it turns on. It's like, what have I been missing? And it never skips a meal for the rest of its life. So you can't give up on them either, because I've had them where it's like just you fight and pound your head against the wall, and then one day it's like, oh wait, this is good.
And since we are in the in the midst of hatching season and stuff like that, for people that either just getting their first year of hatchlings and is about to start banging their head against the wall trying to feed a hognose, what's your recommendation of feeding, time frame after coming out the egg, feeding, and then dealing with those
I like to let them after shed fully while they're still in the incubator. If they can, we'll move them to the bin, and normally the day after they're in the bin, which would have been tonight, but I ran out of time. So for our new ones today, is normally the day after we'll start. And I know not everyone will agree with me on this. I like to start off with scenting right away, get them eating, and then worry about switching them over. The sooner you get them eating, in my opinion, the better they do. Instead of holding that snake off, which doesn't have a meal, and get them take unscented. If we'll do scenting with tadpoles and stuff right away, and just get food into them.
Once they start eating,
they
want to keep eating. They don't usually go off of food unless husbandry is an issue.
Yeah, and it's definitely much easier to switch them from scented to unscented than save an animal that's emaciated because it wasn't smart enough to figure it out.
Yeah, because at that point they could have internal organ damage from not eating for so long. And they might never start just because you didn't want to offer them what they needed to encourage.
So you guys start with tadpoles, you say?
Yes. We use tadpoles. We put a pond out front in our front yard, so we get native tadpoles, and we tried to grab the Cuban tree frogs since they're invasive, and the tadpoles don't have the same effect as the larger tree frogs, and that can have toxins. So when the tadpoles, they don't have the toxins, and we use the tadpoles instead of the frogs themselves. That's our primary source is Cuban tree frogs. Tadpoles. You got to verify this. They say the tadpole part because the adults do produce toxins.
I mean, we have raised the babies up and use like the little froglets too. But for the most part, and usually that's like you end up euthanizing them and then pulling them out from the freezer later on to actually use for scenting. If you're going to use froglets,
they can produce hundreds of babies per female. One batch of eggs in your pond is enough for the season.
I'm pretty sure I actually wiped out my Cuban tree frog issue.
You're doing a service.
It's weird. Like
the Cuban tree frog eggs float, and the native frogs will actually lay them underneath. So if you catch them the morning after they lay, you just take a net, scoop them all out, put them in a container, and you've just removed the entire 500 Cuban tree frogs from the local population in one swift stroke. So
and any worries with like parasites or any bacteria that those wild frogs can catch and stuff?
No more than feeding any other rodents from any other facility. I mean, even frozen rodents, there's parasites and everything moving around there. We do take the eggs and hatch the tadpoles in a more controlled environment, but it is
I
from
feed
the
them,
wild.
I feed them myself. I don't, rely on the wild insect population or anything like that.
But it is definitely, you always have to worry about parasites no matter where you're where you're grabbing food from.
That's a great topic because having a good mice
clean source of rodents,
it's so important.
There's a huge difference between the cheap ones and the slightly more expensive ones.
Yes. And price is not always the factor, but that's one of the biggest thing we've been talking about at shows and people that are just getting into reptiles or hognose is choose a good source of mice and stuff like that.
If you pull the rodents out of the bag and they feel slimy, please change suppliers.
Or Yeah.
before. Like we shopped with some cheaper locations that were closer by and always had stock.
And then we were dosing all of our snakes all at the same time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And so, we've learned yet again for those situations, we buy from very specific suppliers. Like we only use 2 suppliers in the US. And one is here in Florida and one is all the way in California.
Yeah.
And they're the most expensive ones as far as I know, but they also come in,
clean,
vacuum sealed, clean.
I'm never pulling poop off.
They're not
rodents,
decapitated. They're not in pieces. Like they're all
How do
almost
they even decapitate them?
supplied.
I've always wondered that. Like it's in a bag. Like what happened to this mouse?
I don't know. One of the biggest things, especially with hatching season around the corner, is if you're getting day olds or even pinkies that by the time you're done feeding one row of animals, the rest are melting away.
Yeah.
That's and my not my first breeding season, but my first getting haul of bulk mice, I went with the cheaper option.
Yeah.
Years ago. And
when you're ordering $1,000 of mice or more at a time, it's hard. No matter like you're still looking at it going, it's a lot of money for mice. Like no matter
and never again would I order from that company. I contacted them and it's like, hey, this is issues with the mice. Their
freezer burnt. They're
They're like
they have urine on them.
And their answer was that's how they come. And I was like, all right, you guys lost my business. Never again.
Yeah.
And that was early on. I think that was a good lesson for me, with supplier pricing, and really gave me, okay, let me deep dive into.
For a few pennies more a mouse.
Correct.
I mean, it adds up when you're ordering thousands of mice at a time, but normally you're talking a few pennies. You know what I mean? Per meal.
And some of them offer good bulk discounts. So if you can afford
the more you buy at a time,
and you can afford it all at once, it makes more sense to buy in bulk and store it a little bit longer.
Yeah, we have a separate freezer for our rodents. So it's not in with the family food. And but it's mainly because of the space, the amount of space in that taking up. We were keeping them, next to everything else because it's no big deal, but we ran out of room very quickly for how many mice we would buy because you need a lot, especially when you get a couple hundred babies going. I will put a mouse in and I won't move it from bin to bin if that snake doesn't eat it. That mouse from the snake, I'll leave it, give it time. It doesn't get refrozen. It doesn't get introduced to anything else. That mouse is now gone. And come baby season, I'm throwing out a lot of mice. Which can also be discouraging. I used to throw them in the yard next door, and now neighbors live there. And Erin's like, just throw them at them anyways. I'm not throwing a bunch of dead mice at the neighbors.
That is, you just reminded me of last year because I haven't started feeding babies yet, just putting them away. I just thought about that, pulling out. I ended up doing, pulling out half, like especially if I had especially 30 babies, I'll pull out maybe 20 instead of 30. Yep. And, okay, this baby doesn't look interested. Let's try to feed this one, and stuff like that. But like you said, you end up, if you're drop feeding and stuff like that, or, you end up going back and that's garbage at that point.
I'll try to entice them, get them to eat. Cause the ones that eat off tongues are always the strong feeders, the best ones. But if they don't take off tongues, I always leave it with them because I go back to that, like I said earlier, as long as they eat, I don't care what I had to do to get it done. Just get the food into them. So we'll leave them. I leave them overnight. The next morning I go and clear all the carcasses, mark who didn't eat. And that's just our way of tracking them. But no matter what, once I offer it to a snake, that mouse is with that snake. It doesn't go to another one. And it's it's a lot of waste, but I hear people talk just refreeze them, and I'm sitting there going
there's no way.
There's no way.
Yeah.
You know how fast bacteria starts to bloom inside a dead body? Yeah, and that's
let alone at the state that they're at when they're just being offered. When you first start offering a day old pinky mouse to a baby snake, it's already starting to get kind of nasty, unfortunately. The longer it sits there, the worse it gets. And there's no way we're going to refreeze it.
Yeah, you go back 45 minutes in, they're already starting to get soft. You know what I mean? It's
for sure.
There's no way.
Add in the fact that you scented it with frog, and it's absolutely horrendous and not worth keeping. And besides the fact that we just ended up kind of changing the amount of times we offer. Like instead of doing every 3 or 4 days, like it's
put more time in
it's
between.
pretty much weekly now.
Yeah.
And
maybe
it seems like they actually do better for the most part. Like
I
they
agree.
do better when you don't offer them too often.
Yeah, because then they have that thought like, oh man, I should eat this. It might not be back.
Yeah.
You know, it does seem to help. Because when we first started, we were offering like, you know, where people would be like, well, just wait another day and try again. You know, and you want that snake to eat because you want it to start eating. You want it to grow. You want it to be able to sell. Yeah, you panic too. We have had snakes that have lived more than 6 months without ever touching a meal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, without no force feeding, no, like they just are in their.
I think that
cycle, you know,
leaving that, especially that fresh hatchling, alone between meals is so important. You know, I hear it's just like, hey,
it's like it's bedtime. You guys know that, right? Like,
yeah, you know, I think that's one of the biggest things I've told people. It's like, don't try to offer every other day or every 2 days. Give it a week. Let that animal feel comfortable, feel safe. Yeah. It's such a big difference.
Especially after we ship them too. Like one of the things we ship a little pamphlet that's like, you know, wait 7 days, really let it settle in. And I would say 30% of the time you get a photo the same day they arrived. They pick it from FedEx at 10:40 and at 11:15 they're sending you a photo going, oh, it's eating. It's like, that's great. But, you know, it would have been really better if you just gave it a little bit of time to settle prior to.
Yeah, because sometimes it'll eat, but then it'll realize how stressful the situation is, and then it'll regurgitate, and then it has to wait another 2 weeks. And then you're in this cycle of like it being traumatized, I guess, because it, you know, ate and then it got sick that it doesn't want to eat. And so rather than just, you know, trying to be patient and wait it out, but you know, we did the same thing when we first started. And
animals showed up. Let's make sure it eats. You know, it takes a lot of self-control.
That I wrote the really in-depth care guide, but I also wrote a kind of a walkthrough guide on how to get a new snake that you just got from someone else. Like, and let's say you're a new hognose keeper, let's make sure it has the proper husbandry and go through this checklist of why it's not eating, essentially.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that's based on that experience of, you know, putting it in too large of a tank and where it doesn't feel safe.
Where the temperatures are off.
Or the temperatures are off. I can't say how many times I had someone complain that their snake wasn't eating, and I asked them what their temperatures were, and they said
they're good.
Oh,
you know, it's like,
yeah, I should go check that, right? And come to find out, it's just a matter of the temperatures, or you know, in winter, it's a matter of a light cycle.
Is a big one.
You know, I used to say you didn't have to have light, but now it's gotten to the point where I say you need some kind of dedicated light source to give it a light cycle, because animals in nature require a light cycle to understand
the seasons,
what time of the season it is, and what time of the year, and you know, that's how they base their life.
Yeah, especially our snakes, they're diurnal, you know, so they are up during the day. They're most active and stuff like that.
When if you only have it near a window and you live up in, you know, Montana, you know, your days are real short, real quick, and that animal's going to eat a lot less than if it thinks that the day's 14 hours old.
Yeah. And if you want naturalistic behavior, go for it. But
but don't get upset when it stops eating, because it's just doing what it's told.
Stops eating, like it's no longer going to be a naturalistic behavior. If you want it to get back to eating, you're going to have to provide a light cycle.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think, you know, brumation is so important, because it gives them that break that they're used to from you know, nature and stuff like that. You know, feeding a hognose, I think every week for their whole life, you're going to go through that break that they take their off. You know?
Even during summer, skipping every once in a while to let them kind of clear out does seem to help too. I mean, I'll do that with females, especially if they get to the point where they're having hairballs, or, you know, because I'm sure you have that where, you know, just sometimes the hair is not digesting quite all the way.
Right.
Skip a meal or two, you know, it's not going to hurt her, you know, or him. And then it does seem to help. You know, just let them pass everything out of them and start out clean.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you guys use any other scents for the hatchlings and stuff like that, or
occasionally tuna or canned
salmon? We've tried the sausages. Never had any luck with that. What are those things
with
called?
The Mexicans? The Reptilinks worked amazing for my Mexican hognose. Those little guys came roaring out of their bins, and
they smash in their face against the
smash the sausage all over their face. It would just be like covering their face. They were just so excited. But
Yeah.
for some reason, they just don't work on any of the other animals.
We haven't had much,
I've purchased them multiple times, hoping that like we could help vary their diet, because we want to do the same thing that most new keepers want to do. Like, we want to provide a more natural, varied diet, like, you know, because it's got to be a little bit more healthy. But they just don't want to eat it. Once they get on mice, they don't really want to stop eating mice.
Yeah, I've had I have females that will eat mice, reptilinks, quail. Most of my hatchlings that I kept, my holdback stuff. I think maybe out of the 13 I think I kept, 1 or 2 won't eat reptilinks.
Yeah.
But everything else will try. We'll eat.
That's pretty impressive.
That's really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish ours had the same interest.
Yeah, because we've even had breeding females where I can't get them to take them. Like they'll take anything, but then it's like there's, you know. But as far as the babies go, though, we've pretty much I'll try anything. You know, if I get a stubborn one, because no matter what, every season there will be more than one that is not interested in the basics of survival.
But usually it's the frog toad that works best. And we do have native toads. It's just we try not to
damage native
them
populations,
because they are native toads that they would eat.
Yes.
It's just we don't want to take from the native
By far, the
populations.
spadefoots are the thing. If you want to see
They
their,
do really
their brains explode, they do love spadefoots. But since they are native, I try not to.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, sometimes like you can find like the tadpoles on like eBay or something like that, and you can buy a bunch of spadefoot tadpoles. And so we'll raise those up and use those.
We did try raising spadefoots, and they all ate each other.
They did, yeah.
Get out of here, really?
Yeah, we had to take the spadefoots, and we went to check on them. It was like, there's one big one. It's like, well, that didn't work at all. I had no idea they were cannibalistic. It took like 24 hours.
Wow. That's interesting. That's good to know.
Way too quick.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Because I've had the same thought. I was like, you know, I'm just gonna get some tadpoles and raise them up and stuff like that. Yeah.
It's good for scenting. It's not a viable option for feeding. As much as people want to do for hognose snakes, they want to raise frogs to feed them their natural diet.
Yeah.
You know, you risk parasites more and more frequently because frogs eat insects. And so once
and they're in the water.
Insect is and they're in the water. Like once an insect is introduced in the diet, you are more likely to have parasites introduced into the diet. And even if you're doing it in captivity, there's really no way around it.
For sure.
Yeah, I don't honestly feel like the hognose in captivity are as well suited for that kind of diet susceptibility.
Yeah, you know, and you know that's a good point, because I don't think that we can solely feed those animals toads or frogs and stuff like that.
No.
You know, I think with them being in captivity for so long, they're changing their behavior.
Especially the ones that have been successful and have been breeding successfully off eating rodents, their babies are more likely to be successful off eating rodents.
Yeah.
So the longer we're breeding them in, because I mean, I'm sure, you know, I always have the ones that I call the efficient growers. And I love those lines because I know the babies that come out of them are going to eat and they're going to grow. And they'll be 200 grams by the end of by their first winter. And you're sitting there going, other babies from other snakes are still at 25 grams.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And some of them are just much more efficient. And I do believe that is from, you know, they either came from a line that just ate more rodents in the wild, or over time they've gotten better at it. And those are my favorite ones to keep because I know they're going to just thrive. You know, absolutely.
You know, have you guys ever brumated your holdbacks?
We normally do. This season here, I kept the holdbacks out a little bit longer, and I actually just put them in the room now. I for whatever reason, pretty much everything we got in Daytona has been in the quarantine rack, and I just put them in the room 2 weeks ago. Like it's
some of them.
Yeah, some of them are still some in the quarantine rack. So I didn't move them until they were actually kind of outgrowing their bin. And I was like, you know, it's time for them to be on hoppers. It's time to put them in the room. It's easier instead of, you know, going through a rack meal like this one needs pinkies still. This one needs fuzzies. This one needs hoppers. It's like it's in the room. It eats hoppers. You know?
Have you noticed any growth difference from hatchlings that you haven't brumated and that you have?
No.
After the fact?
No, we did that the 1 year. I mean, we probably done it.
I think we tried it for some that just weren't eating or growing.
Yeah, they're like, if you brumate them, that'll trigger them.
Didn't work for us. But we're also in Florida, and we also didn't change light cycles or anything because at that time we were using wine coolers.
So you can't control the light cycle.
So you can't control the light cycles. And I am a firm believer at this point that the light cycles have a really, really big part to play in the brumation process. And if you're not altering your light cycles, you're potentially not providing them with the full brumation season that they need.
Putting them just in the dark, you know. I mean, if you can get any kind of light on there, I do believe that helps. Because even during winter, when it is 53 degrees in there, during the day, they're still active. Like they will be up and moving. You can go in and check on them. We don't have water in the bins. I offer water, just occasionally. Like here, you can drink and then take water out. We don't leave it in there, but
they almost never drink.
They almost never drink. I don't know if I've actually ever seen one drink, but it
But they're more likely to knock it over and get respiratory infections if you leave it in.
Correct. But sometimes they're fully active. There are breeders up north that I know that will start pairing while it's still cold. We tried that last year, and I saw zero activity for males or females when cold.
And I think that's with changing, especially at an older age. It's a very big, I think.
Yeah, they know your pattern. That's one of the problems again that we feel buying already mature animals. They're used to another cycle. Yeah. And it's going to take you at least a season, if not 2 seasons or more, to get them back on some kind of productive cycle.
Correct. Yeah. So I know we're getting close to 2 hours here. Any last topic? So I don't want to keep you guys too much longer that we didn't touch over.
No, I mean, there's a few things have on my mind. There's always so much.
Yeah, but anything that you maybe had in mind that before we close out tonight and stuff like that?
I mean, I guess since most of the people here seem to either be breeders or seem to be just getting into hognose, I highly, highly suggest if there is even the slightest chance that, I'm talking like 33% chance or 25% chance that a genetic might be carried, like a morph might be carried, like let's say 25% possible head albino. Include it in your information for that animal.
Don't mark up the price for it.
Yeah, you don't have to mark up the price and include it in how you value that animal, but include it in the
history.
In the history of the
I feel like there should be like an industry term, like lineage. Albino, lineage xanthic, like somewhere in its recorded past, this gene was there because we bought so many animals with the intent of not having a gene because we didn't want it mixed in. And then we breed, and I know a lot of people love those bonus genes because they're like, "Hey, I got something for free." But if you don't want it there,
you don't need it.
It's sometimes there's definitely times where you're like, I don't want this involved.
Yeah.
And then you're sitting there going, "Well, I raised up this animal," and I mean, I know not everybody has control of it. Not everybody has records of 5 generations back. Like I do get it, but we've had animals, where we marked them like 25% chance of sable. And then the people who we've sold them to have produced sable. And if you didn't mark it on there, the person never would have even tried pairing it to find out if it might have sable. Yeah. But for us specifically, like we were trying to make ghosts without albino in it. And because we kept getting weird looking albino ghosts. So we bought an xanthic hypo with nothing else. That was one of the things we asked, nothing else. And we still produced albinos. And it's like, we're still not where we need to be on this. I still just want straight ghosts. You know what I mean? And it's so occasionally it's one of those things I feel like as an industry, a terminology or tracking of that of history would be very cool. I know it's not going to happen overnight or even possibly even happen.
Yeah.
But
and that's one thing I love Husbandry Pro because it's in there. And it's
you look back generations.
Correct. You can actually pull up a lineage tree from it and send it to somebody.
Yeah. So anything that might be in there because there's always that possibility. Yeah. And I mean, even if it's a slim chance, like you said, don't price it, for a slim chance. Like there's no reason to do that. But just let the person know. You don't even have to, just even in like we've had with animals where we'll tell them after we've sold them the animal, sent it like, it has this, like its grandfather was a het. So there's a slim chance that this is too, but it wasn't.
And sometimes you can't tell. Like we have an animal from hardcore that you can't tell what it is by looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
And we still couldn't tell based on what she produced last year. Yeah. So like maybe in the future, like either
we'll know 100%,
like
exactly what's going on. Yeah.
We'll be able to figure it out because now we know, like we can narrow it down to like which male has to go in with her for that one.
And like we bought a caramel albino Arctic, sorry, and we bred that to a Bubs Daddy, and then we sold the Bubs Daddies and Sub-Zeros and everything, and we put them as 100% het caramel. But we didn't have anything for hypo because we didn't know whether or not it had hypo in it. And we've had 2 people get back to us going, hey, is there a possibility of there being hypo in here because I made frosteds? And I know that caramel and hypo are real tight. And at this point here, being that pretty much everybody we've sold them to, and we got our first babies from this year, have produced frosts or hypos, is ours actually a frosted albino Arctic? Because once you throw albino in there, telling the difference between frosted and caramel is pretty much like flip a coin. You know, so
they're all albinos.
They're all albinos. Like you're losing the ability to look at the dark pigment. So the difference between a frost and a caramel is going to be, once they're albino in there, I don't know how you tell the difference.
Yeah, no.
So it's just one of those things where then we end up sending out animals, and like again, people get excited by those free genes, but if we know the lineage, then it kind of just the more it could influence pairing, it may not, but it's...
I like to think it would. I mean, there's been plenty of times where if I'd known about something, I either wouldn't have gotten the snake or I would have definitely gotten it and paired it to someone else.
And we've also had the other side of the coin where we bought 100% het animals from some people, and they were definitely not. Those were some nice normals we had. So.
Yeah, and it's funny because like last year I was like, all right, I'm going to get some storm cloud stuff. But everything that was inquiring on or people that had availability, it was het albino.
Yeah.
I had albino pair. I was like, I don't want albino in
I don't want it mixed in. Yeah.
I don't want it. So I didn't get anything. What I did is I created my own triple het stuff for Toffee as Antic, Sable stuff this year. I was like, okay, I know there's no albino in that project.
The storm cloud stuff is definitely one of our favorite Sable combos. Unfortunately, our male this year did not succeed with any females we gave him. So,
nice.
Yeah. So it seems like it's always the best looking one. She's in there going, come on, man.
Yeah.
It fluctuates. We made 3 storm clouds 2 years ago.
And haven't made any since.
That's unfortunately how it goes.
For sure. Well, thank you guys for taking your time. We're going to definitely do a second interview. We can get more deep into genetics, into maybe some husbandry stuff, definitely, getting to insight into your guys' world and, just knowing who you guys are. I think it was a first good episode. We talked about, me and Andrew talked about an hour and a half maybe. And look, we're 2 hours and 2 minutes in.
Yeah, this is always what happens when you.
100%. We could probably go for another 2 hours.
Yeah, in Daytona, I ended up talking with you for so long. By the time, I think it was I got back on the second day. She was so mad at me because I abandoned her.
Like, where were you?
I didn't even notice I abandoned her. I just walked because Daytona was so slow. The halls were empty. You know what I mean? So it was like that second day. I was just wandering around talking to people. And by the time I got back to her, she was about ready to divorce me. And I was like, I didn't even notice. Like I was like 45 minutes. It's like
3 hours.
Yeah. So once you start talking, it's there's a lot more. Definitely a lot more to say. Especially when it comes to the genetics and stuff. So.
Yeah. I think the roundtable thing for Daytona sounds like a really cool idea. I think Friday night might be the better option. Yeah. Saturday night has the auction, and everyone always wants to go to the auction.
Yeah, we'll definitely.
Friday people tend to be a little more calm and prior.
Definitely have to brainstorm that and reach out to people ahead of time to try to schedule something. But like I said, thank you guys for coming on. I'm gonna do the outro real quick. Stay backstage real quick. We're gonna definitely schedule maybe either later on this year or next year a round 2. And like I said, thank you for everybody that sat here and watched. Guys, make sure you guys subscribe, go down the description below and go follow Ectotherm Empire on Instagram. Go check out their website. Their links are all in the description as well. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you guys for joining us tonight.